Now, Tom Dwan is under the gun from the straddle, and he makes an incredibly light open here with 7-5 offsuit. To another high-stakes poker, crushlivepoker.com hand review, and this time we're going to take a look at a hand that was played in episode 9 between Tom Dwan and Chamath Palihapitiya. Now, Chamath is a big-time investment guy. He actually has one of my favorite podcasts, or he's a co-host on one of my favorite podcasts called the All In Podcast. He loves poker, and there was a hand that I reviewed a few months ago where he actually made quads versus me and got paid off, and we're going to see something a little bit similar in this particular hand. So the hand starts off, and the game that they're playing is 400-800, with an 800 big blind ante, but Chamath actually puts on the straddle for 1600. We start this hand about 130,000 effective, so just under 100 big blinds with basically the straddle. Now, Tom Dwan is under the gun from the straddle, and he makes an incredibly light open here with 7-5 offsuit. And I don't know why he decided to open 7-5 off from basically under the gun, but there is a lot of dead money out there with this straddle, and perhaps he thought that it was profitable to risk 5,000 to win what was out there. Now, what's interesting here is Helmuth, who starts the hand with about 180,000, he just folds pocket sixes basically next to act. So kind of a tight fold, and it gets all the way back around to Chamath in the straddle. And he makes somewhat of an interesting play here too, and decides to 3-bet with pocket nines. And the reason why I think that that's kind of interesting is usually if someone's raising from under the gun, you're not going to 3-bet a hand like nines, basically closing the action. I would pretty much always call here unless someone else in the field called and you could basically squeeze them. But he makes it 17,000, so he makes it just about 3.5x. Now, Dwan, again, this really shouldn't be an open from under the gun. And when you take a look at the absolute bottom part of his opening range from early position, this is certainly going to be one of the hands that's going to be in the bottom part of his opening range. And you need to fold out some hands. So obviously this would just be a fold, but perhaps he wants to play, against the amateur in position. So he decides to call and they take a flop. So with the pot being $36,000, the board comes out 10-9-5 with 2 spades. Must be nice. To be Chamath, he flops middle set. He makes a $20,000 continuation bet, which I think is perfectly fine here with middle set. This is slightly different than if the open raise had come from, say, late position, like if Dwan was on the button and then defended to, a 3-bet where he might have more hands. The board would be scarier, but because this is supposed to be a tight configuration and you hold middle set, it's really not a bad board to come out and bet. I could also see sometimes checking here as well. And the problem here for Dwan is that he's had a piece of it. Obviously, he's not going to fold to about a 1/3 pot size bet here on the flop when he hits basically what is bottom pair. And obviously, Chamath could have high cards like ace king, ace queen. So I think Dwan, if he made it here on the flop, has a fairly standard continue to a $20,000 bet. And that's what he does. He does call. So with the pot being 76,000, they go to the turn and it's a 9. And Chamath makes quads once again. Now, Chamath has just under a pot and a half size bet left here. So he has the decision. Obviously he could bet again kind of small, or he could check. I actually like what he did here, and he did check. I think that with his small bet size on the flop, and with Dwan obviously calling, you want to give Dwan a chance to bet some of his floats on the flop, like a king, queen, possibly spades. Dwan also might bet off a 10 for protection. He could be making a very light call with some sort of straight draw or something like that. So I have absolutely no problem here with Chamath checking, making it look like he kind of missed with ace, king, ace, queen, letting Dwan basically take a stab at it. Now, when it gets checked to Dwan, he has a decision if he does want to make a very small kind of protectionist type of bet. He could bet something like 25% of the pot. He just doesn't want to allow basically a free card to come if, Chamath had a hand like ace, king, ace queen, also give him sort of a cheaper price on a bluff if Dwan was floating basically in position, and he might actually get called by some worse hands like some ace high hands as well. So I could see sometimes betting here very, very small, or sometimes checking it back. He, I guess, took the conservative route and decided to check it back. Where I would do that is if my opponent was somewhat aggressive and might try to represent, an overcard or something like that might come, or might just blast off basically at the end. But Dwan does check it back. So with the pot being 76,000, we roll the river and it's an offsuit 7. So it slightly improves Dwan's hand, but of course anyone with an overpair or a 10 or a 9, would beat him. And now Chamath, with about 95,000 left in his stack, pushes out a big stack of chips, and it ends up being 85,000 for a slight overbet, not quite all in. Now, let's take a look at this from Dwan's perspective. It is somewhat of a strange line by somebody who has 3-bet from the straddle his under the gun raise. Now, the front door flush draw did miss, and perhaps he doesn't think that Chamath would play a hand like aces or kings, in this particular fashion. A hand like Jack 8 gets there. Not that either one of these players really should, kind of have that. And the other thing, too, maybe for Dwan, is that he blocks some of the full houses. Again, Chamath making a pretty tight raise from the straddle, but Dwan blocks, say, pocket 7s. He blocks pocket 5s. And, it might be one of these things where he's looking at this, and again, it's a very polarizing type of line if he doesn't think that Chamath is going to check an overpair on the turn, then basically blast almost all in at the end. So if that's the case, then he might think that Chamath really only has like a hand like pocket 10s or quad 9s here, or he's bluffing. Maybe he started a bluff with king queen suited. Maybe he started a bluff with a front door flush draw and it missed. And when Dwan checked back the turn, Chamath is basically going to try to blast him off of some, sort of in between holding, which is exactly kind of what he has, like some sort of low pair or something like that. Now, we've seen Dwan make these types of hero calls, and we've seen him think that people are polarized, and he sort of runs into a lot of value. And he thought about it for a while. Now it's just over the size of the pot, so he actually has to be good here. Maybe I would say 1 in 1.8 to 1.9 times from a minimum defense frequency. He probably has to call with hands that arrive here because, Chamath is betting over the size of the pot, maybe about 45% of the hands that he arrives here with. Is he going to arrive here with hands that are better than 7-5? Most likely. So I don't think it really falls into that 45%, but he ended up talking himself into it, and he did finally make the call. And once again, Chamath is going to show down quads on a televised game, the first time being against me. And I'll put a link to the video where I go over that hand from Poker Night in America as well. Do me a favor, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn notifications on so that you can see every time we put up a new video right here on YouTube, and head over to crushlivepoker.com. You can check out the coupon code in the description for the first 30 days for free.